1923, Germany was in the worst condition the world had ever seen. Imagine a country where money had no value at all. When people went out in the morning to buy bread, they had to take a wheelbarrow full of banknotes with them. To buy a single egg, you had to pay billions of marks. Children played in the streets by building houses out of stacks of currency notes because they were cheaper than toys. In winter, people burned money instead of firewood to keep their homes warm. After losing World War I, the Treaty of Versailles had crushed Germany completely. They had the biggest debt in the world, their industry was destroyed, and their army had been dismantled. Germany was technically bankrupt. Then time moved forward, and we arrive in 1939, just 15 years later. Now that same Germany had become the world's most powerful, modern, and dangerous war machine. They had thousands of tanks, modern aircraft soaring in the skies under the Luftwaffe, and U-boats dominating the seas. This was the same country that once couldn't afford food, and now it was preparing to conquer the world. The question is, how did this happen? When Germany had no gold, no credit, and no bank in the world was willing to lend them money, how did Hitler buy all of this? Where did the money come from? Was this an economic miracle or the biggest Ponzi scheme in history? Today's story unveils the secret behind this mystery. When Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in January 1933, he stood before an economic graveyard. 6 million people were unemployed. Factories had shut down. Hitler had promised to make Germany great again, but speeches alone couldn't buy tanks. Hitler knew he wanted war, but war needed money. Hitler wasn't an economist, he was only a political magician. To solve this financial crisis, he searched for someone who was a devilishly brilliant mind in finance. That man was Hjalmar Schacht. Schacht became the president of Germany's central bank, the Reichsbank. Hitler told him, "I don't need money, I need tanks. Get them from anywhere." Schacht warned that printing money directly would bring back the inflation of 1923, so the world's eyes had to be deceived. Schacht came up with a method still taught in economic schools today as an example of dark genius. He created the MIFO bills. The entire system was a fraud. According to the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was forbidden from producing weapons or allocating a budget for weapons. If Germany openly wrote in its budget, "We are building tanks," France and Britain would attack immediately. So Schacht created a fake company called Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft, whose short form was MIFO. This company didn't actually exist. Its office was just a tiny room, but on paper it was the biggest industrial company in Germany. Here's how it worked. When the German army, the Wehrmacht, gave an order to a large factory like Krupp or Siemens to produce tanks, they didn't pay them with government money. Instead, they gave them MIFO bills, basically IOUs. The government told factory owners, "We won't pay you now. Keep this MIFO bill. It will give you 4% interest, and you can cash it at a bank after 6 months." Factory owners were threatened and tempted at the same time. They were told that if they refused the bills, they were traitors, but if they accepted them, they would become rich. Since the big industrialists feared Hitler and wanted profit, they accepted the bills. This allowed Hitler to build weapons without spending a real penny. Germany produced tanks, planes, and guns, and none of this appeared in the national budget. It was the world's biggest shadow budget. From 1933 to 1939, Germany issued 12 billion marks in MIFO bills, an unimaginable sum at that time. But building weapons wasn't enough. People needed jobs so they would remain loyal. Hitler announced the construction of the Autobahn, modern highways. This was the world's first major highway system. Propaganda claimed it was for ordinary people's cars, but German citizens didn't even own cars. These roads were actually built so that German tanks could quickly move from one border to another during war. This project created millions of jobs. But what kind of jobs were they?
Hitler had banned trade unions. Workers' rights were erased. They were forced into the Reich Labor Service, a form of compulsory labor. Young men wore military-style uniforms and were sent to farms and construction sites. Their wages were extremely low, but they received food and were removed from unemployment statistics. Hitler removed women from jobs and took away the citizenship of Jews so they wouldn't appear in unemployment figures. This is how Hitler claimed he had ended unemployment, when in reality, he had simply turned people into forced labor.
Another huge problem remained. Germany had no resources. Tanks needed oil, tires needed rubber, bullets needed metal, and Germany lacked all of this. They imported everything, but imports required foreign currency, dollars or pounds, which Germany didn't have. This is where Schacht played another trick. He started a barter system with South America and Balkan countries, goods in exchange for goods. Germany promised machinery in return for raw materials like oil. But again, Germany deceived them, taking raw materials and delaying or sending defective machinery. Hitler wanted Germany to become an autarky, a self-sufficient nation. German scientists got to work. They began producing synthetic oil from coal. Germany had plenty of coal but no oil, so they turned coal into fuel through chemical processes. They also developed synthetic rubber. Companies like IG Farben built massive plants for this purpose. And the money to build these plants? Still coming from Mefo bills. Everything was running on debt, a balloon waiting to burst. By 1936, Hjalmar Schacht realized this fraud couldn't continue forever. The debt had become so massive that if factories demanded cash for their Mefo bills, Germany would collapse. Schacht told Hitler, "We must stop. The economy is overheating. We will be destroyed." Hitler hated the idea of stopping. He fired Schacht and put Hermann Göring in charge of the economy. Göring famously said, "Guns or butter? Guns will make us strong, butter will only make us fat." Germany decided it no longer cared whether its people were hungry. Every bit of money would go toward the military. This is where the darkest chapter begins. When normal methods of getting money ended, Hitler turned to theft and plunder. The first victims were Germany's own citizens, the Jews. The Nazi government began the process of Aryanization. This was outright robbery. Jewish shops, factories, and businesses were seized and sold to Germans for almost nothing. If any Jew tried to escape Germany for safety, they were forced to pay the Reich flight tax, meaning they had to hand over their entire wealth to the government just to leave. After Kristallnacht in 1938, Hitler imposed a fine of 1 billion marks on the Jews. That money went directly into preparing the military. The truth people often forget is that a large portion of Hitler's military was built using stolen wealth.
But looting Germany's Jews wasn't enough. The bubble was about to burst. In 1938, Germany was on the verge of bankruptcy. They had no money to pay for imports. Hitler had only one option: loot other countries. This is where the Anschluss, the takeover of Austria, came into play. When German tanks rolled into Austria in March 1938, their first target was the Austrian Central Bank. The Nazis stole all of Austria's gold and foreign currency reserves. The amount was so huge, it kept Germany's economy alive for months. This wasn't an annexation, it was a bank robbery. Next, Hitler targeted Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia had strong industry and some of the best arms factories in the world, the Skoda Works. When Germany took over the country, they acquired not just gold, but also thousands of ready-made tanks and guns. Hitler upgraded his army using Czechoslovakia's money and weapons. Historians say that if Hitler hadn't started war in 1938 or 1939, Germany's economy would have collapsed on its own. Germany had no food and was sitting on a mountain of gunpowder. War became a necessity because he needed new lands and new treasure to pay off his debts. Another major fraud Hitler pulled on his own people was the Volkswagen, people's car scheme. Hitler promised every German family their own car. He told people to deposit 9 marks every week in a savings account. When they reached 990 marks, they would receive a brand new car. Millions saved money, sacrificing their basic needs. The government collected millions of marks. But the truth is, not a single German citizen ever received that car. When the war began, the Volkswagen factory stopped producing cars and started making military vehicles instead. The public's money was stolen and poured into the military.
When Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, it wasn't just hunger for land, it was financial desperation. Germany's entire system was functioning through plunder. As soon as the German army entered Poland, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, they began looting everything. From France, they took millions of francs daily under the title occupation costs. They seized grain, machinery, art, and gold, sending it all back to Germany. German soldiers mailed packages home filled with stolen clothes, food, and alcohol. The German economy could survive only as long as they kept winning new lands. The day they stopped winning, their bankruptcy would be exposed. So if we summarize this entire story, the answer is terrifying. Hitler did not fund Germany's massive military through any economic miracle. It was a pyramid scheme. First, he took huge loans with heavy interest. Then he exploited his own workers. Then he robbed his Jewish citizens. Finally, when all that ran out, he robbed neighboring countries' banks. He was like a gambler who keeps doubling his bets as he loses, trying to pay off old debts with new ones. Hjalmar Schacht, the mastermind of the fraud, later turned against Hitler and was sent to a concentration camp. At the Nuremberg trials, he said Hitler was the biggest thief in history. Today, when we watch documentaries showing the power of German tanks, we must remember their fuel was made from coal, their steel was bought with stolen money, and the hands that built them often belonged to forced laborers. Germany wasn't rich, it simply blinded the world and mortgaged its future generations. This was the true reality of Hitler's so-called economic power, a lie that survived 6 years and finally burned the world to ashes.